Hello, dear friends and humanity. Each modern nation, individually grouped and together, is in a semi ancient trap. And so, awake the rap, but native pure vaccines. See, I have a plan. So I forgot what I was going to start doing. I remember, but it was about, I was going to start. See, this is the same thing. This is, I beg you, I beg your pardon, France. But I must beg you to hear this plan and species, each individual grouped in together. We're in a semi-ancient trap that is tactically ulterior from the one that is an identity of the relationship to the ground, less valuable than us, but exceptions, and as exception nature, and relevant to a course by an identity of relativity that science can actually discern as five bonded identities of sequence nature. What is only sequence nature is is negative value nature. What is sequence nature as simultaneous nature also, which is increasing volume, per this identity of relativity that will only stay positive to itself and as itself. Exceptions in exception nature demonstrate Earth's distinct and non-distinct relationship to the rest of space nature, being our distinct and non-distinct relationship to one identity of value progression's identity of relationship to itself, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, this way as five bonded identities of sequence nature. And where identity is a nature of volume that only increases as forever nature, invisible but still discernible. Only the extent of it is debatable. See, we have those extents engineered, all invested, already only having heard a certain nature of theater called criminal insidious nature. Now, I am not a lawyer, I'm not a police force, I'm not a criminal, which is good, which is critical, because originally and still, the branches of modern nations were tortured. I'm going to describe them as victims and show how they've been sustained as victim predators for what was sophistication since before the founding parents of modern parent nations, founders were even born. It was already entrenched. Nations individually grouped and together were forced to be such as identities that couldn't help but be self-valued roles, needs, and natures, blaming the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures with all locations, areas, and states. Even if they were called colonies with that, they're still locations, areas, and states. This is manifest. I tell it best, Bach sings, yin yang never parts. Control our hearts. So we have identities of modern nations, identities of Africa. Now, all in the whole world, all Asia, Russia, America, no one ever connects, uses correlations, sequence true in relationship to when people, with all the summary convictions, for example, associated with history, story that left out predicate value, left out the verbs, identity's value. It's not the predicate, it's the identity that's value. The predicate act is in demonstration of a criminal insidiousness nature, especially a criminally legalized criminal act. So before America's founding parents were even born, those identities of nations that colonized here like England. That wasn't England's identity, but like captive, like everyone else, slave. Writing the phenomenon of how nations together, before that criminal foreign influence took over the methodically, without anyone realizing, it made everyone hurt, tricked, persuaded to devalue internation sciences. No one fathomed what their goal was. To long term, not just just keep going. And while we're doing to long term, they knew that would cause nature to demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts of natures. Because nature's course is why there is internation sciences, why there is individual grouped and together. And when that is valued simultaneously, it is in that sequence. But it is only as positive also unto its positive unto itself when it is in that sequence. When value comes individual first. See, America doesn't have free speech yet. We have identities of branches that are self-valuing how they have to keep lies between shared policing, shared training of police with all locations, areas, and states. These are identities of law. These are identities of relativity, of sequence relativity, to and as the simultaneous nature we really are. Reliant upon a tactically denatured value of identity of the ground relationship to our quality of fact treatment nature that is native pure. And that makes Native Americans, for example, more and more value positive or negative when they make opinions, which they're forced as victims to entertain what they have. You can't entertain and defend a nation, the Constitution, the values simultaneously. See, we have trick fact. We have uses already invested of each individual of each branch of government as victims per the same method in collusion, all formal private in conjunction, all sciences, all identity ground locations before this. Then further and further, all abridged sciences, no. Simultaneously with that of identity of the ground relationship tactically denatured, simultaneously with the value nature relationship between them, tactically denatured, roles within identity of negative value nature progression, that the proverbial devil, an archetypal organized crime method, effectively engineered to effectively use remotely. The quality of fact treatment nature, the premises treatments, the sequence nature, the positive treatments as criminal justice nature, used remotely, line progressions from each database relationship, further and further to that, all locations, areas, and states. In a crime method of evil, specifically only for that to be self-valued by the people, all as victims, but as victim predators. See, they won't let us speak about how they're victims, though, because then they're going to be realized. See, because they have now what they do to pretend the branches of government individually grouped and together, here and there, every modern nation. We're in a semi-ancient trap. They are knaves. Fact treatment nature slaves. Could be more powerful than king, more powerful than any title. State, locations, areas of states are all criminally foreign influence, self-valued roles with that, per other methods and motivations, all juxtaposed. with the one that uses that remote. So they all have originally and still precedents and statutes influenced by uses of that by quality of fact treatment nature styles. The schools, the branches of government, and the overt criminal enterprises, individually grouped and together, have another one there, keeping them, each individual of each branch of government, criminally foreign influenced, keeping each individual of each overt criminal enterprise and private ones in collusion with this, especially like databases, campuses, intersciences, and layers further. This is how it is. It's very simple. Correlations, identity of value progression, and the value of that per two identities of value further that are bonded as the value of, for example, of sequence nature. This is science that is discernible. One identity is coming to, from, while as, and while with itself another identity of sequence nature, further, and for itself another identity of sequence nature further. Each identity of value progression has these two identities of possession on both, of timeless possession, unceasing and increasing possession on both sides of it slash us. The halo was revealed to teach this using science. Jesus Christ helped preserve criminally foreign influenced since before modern religions were born. Thank God for them. For multi-front counters to multi-front victim reactions. Not by accident, everyone only capable of blaming other things other than themselves and needing to, in defense of themselves, all kinds of ways. So the plan I'm begging you to listen to, is to make a counter remote. Is like, for example, you have to, like, all we need is mandated law. We have, for example, conspiracy theories. This is one of the ways they make them kept, self-cultivated, propagated this way. Only capable of life progressions. The people only capable of pretending passions and emotions. Each branch of government individually grouped and together using crime methods, forging names and switching names. Uses of the identity of our nation self-valued. They have to hide pretend integrity, all fake sides. Other nations keep this the outcome through DACA. Not DACA's a victim. The people have been, then they have it with different, markets, values, and things like this. Now everyone's voices are employed by, again, though, what is all juxtaposed. That's all what everyone blames. But it's by what before that, which used that remote. But no one's allowing free speech to demonstrate this. We still have courts, so we have obligations to demonstrate how the courts and how the branches of government, their opinions were criminally foreign influenced and delusions wrought at the same time. So they were offensively pejorative and pretending to be against that. They're offensively shock and awe victims, trying to create victims and predator reaction, not knowing how to do it and keeping that more. Maintain self-value as human fact treatment nature, each location of it, each area of it, state of it, sciences of it, further and further to those spots through other natures and motivations of it. Each age of fact treatment nature, the experts on that mentally, they were already having been kept to collusion with through life progressions. Now, see, this is with the private tied to the branches of government also recorded how kept criminally foreign influence with them through time. Roles were all bonded, tactically bonded identities of abuses of each age of fact, treatment, nature, sickly, distinctly recorded effectively, having been kept self-valued, everyone forcing people to blame other things and others themselves because they did. And that's everyone rely upon positive treatments, time treatments. People want love, care for each other, right? The same ones saying that have them follow mandated law. They have these identities. Each of these identities are religions. Roles preventing the free speech, preventing mandated law, pretending it means other than it does, pretending passions and emotions with child offenders, with the same courts punishing the ones real, and then making up things too because they're involved with it with the interbranch kids. They already needed to hide life aggressions. They already needed to hide them with the same people. How many prisons there are? People on off the state judicial branch offices, on off the state prison offices, all along those routes, roads, and highways, and to the exits. All geographical locations involved with this, recorded them, how they're kept needs for sequence shifts, identity thefts, frauds, racketeering, human trafficking acts, roles, bridges to it through other natures and motivations of it. For example, media. So there was a lot that was offered to us. That we were showing our experience through CNN. They did great things through Fox News. CNN, they're doing the great things with Internation, like with what was his name, Andrew Bourdain. You get to see the world. National Geographic. Think I got to experience it, look through those books. But so what do you hear? People repeated. People say, "Oh, you have to come to know, really know." But everyone said, "Well, everything stays the same." So then it becomes just about why there's no change, and everyone makes opinions, and that those opinions are maintained, self-cultivated, self-valued, employed breaching tools, weapons worse than weapons, and breaching screens, all victim predators. Each identity of each ground location, all private. So what do? We just admit that. We admit the identity of the ground relationship. Then we can admit reliefs. Just admitting that we're already in. We admit what we're in standing. Every place has to go better. Well, we don't have space to go better. If we're doing this all at once in this way, we have more earth and things below us than we need to go higher than our head, to reach out for it, and to have that with that things revealed that we couldn't fathom now. This is where evolution comes from. Evolution is fruits and gifts. This method alone, its own vaccines. The science is sharing identity. So the people of all the modern nations at once, distinctly, not distinctly, and simultaneously, have to be put back, have the means of pantheism, have that means to get everyone on the same page with us. Right through, we could show them what is actually recorded. Each identity of modern nations, for example, the ones that have the technology that for all the war things, but no other means no means to afford, individually grouped it together, or even to fathom how to counter the tactically denatured native ground's identity of relationship to itself. that which really revealed all the seeds of the world, that which really revealed all the types of soils. Everything makes a different kind of soil, different identity of soil, different identity of relationship. That the identity of relativity has to itself, positive or negative, distinctly and non-distinctly onto Earth. The more we degrade that, the more lethal IDs, our values forced from here. So not just these weapons are forced, but logistics are forced. Within as this identity of negative value nature progression. Action nature is forcing worse than that. This is the order of the finite. The order that has this is identity of value progression since before we were physiologically valued. That which was is an identity of relationship to itself distinctly and non-distinctly, where it is still gaining, where and as and how through our physiological value, which is demonstrably as a quality of diffusion, not just physical. And so we come also back to the halo and into the value of English, which is revealed as our group language, which is revealed as a value that is changing, that is differential. It's not just variable, it's variable in relationship to identity of value progression. So we have collusion between identity of the ground relationships of sciences that train religions, that train what is practical. So they're training the standing sense and sensibilities of others in relationship to, where everyone comes together, where they talk about unity still as criminal and seditious natures of unity, where all locations, areas, and states are criminally foreign influenced, and all that causes like predicate acts, criminal and seditious natures, criminal and seditious wrongdoers, wrongdoing, mass scale, defenses of that self-value, time treatments of that self-value, everyone getting over on forever nature's course, not realizing, used remote. So my plan is to build a counter remote to demonstrate, for example, how phrases like scientific process and how phrases like scientific consensus were our breaching method employed to uses that kept and keeps through a whole bunch of bonded methods, sequence racketeering roles, line progressions from each identity of the ground relationship. So they don't really love the identities of their campuses, the identities of their jobs, locations. Honestly, no one. And where you can discern this using science is in relationship to those identity of correlation relationships. For example, when people make opinions about the law in regards to civil rights impositions of law criminally foreign influenced originally and still overtly, they're reliant upon blaming on other things others themselves. They're reliant upon even like peaceful war, peaceful differences between nations, and the whole time that every moment they have obligations to explain about the threats with weapons and the nature of war in the modern age, still in the semi-ancient torture, self-valued roles, slavery roles. So this is about also that the recorded self-valued thefts of the identities of America's founding parents and of the identities of other nations' founding parents. So, boxings. But just to claim this, what are we claiming? So this is identity's course, the way of things. Boxings. Allah's name is used to teach about this longing. For example, as value L, as letter L. Every letter is a slash, letter slash value. And the slash, the syllabus, it stands for this is another semi-nature of invisible but still discernible. Identity of value, where the identity of value of each identity of value is a trinity. Because the identity of value progression, its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that is a trinity. And that took manifest. This is before matter. This is before Jesus Christ. This is before modern religion. This is before the earth was generated. One identity's relationship to itself, and the value of that was a value identity, a value progression that is what was and is self-generating, only increasing. So identity is the nature of volume, not per theory, per science. See, we have the theory of relativity. We have volume theory offensively with physical delusions, also with the religions, for example, each of the sciences, because of the nature of this method that has already had the branches of government tell sequence shifts, finite lies, active lies, progressive lies, identity thefts, frauds and racketeering roles with overt criminal enterprises and with private ones, and with that juxtaposed with that. These campuses from intercampuses of each age and nature are roles with overt criminal enterprises, with private criminal enterprises, with all the sciences of each age and fact treatment nature. All their programs on and off campuses, training people to enter foreign were shared, suit and tie. They're involved with other natures of motivations for predicate acts, other methods of pulling that off and of hiding it. Just overtly lying to the people about what is actually recorded online, what is actually recorded over the mail, what is actually recorded over phones, what is actually recorded having been uses of the identity of the ground locations like the New Haven FBI, like Yale, like UConn, like Central Connecticut State University, like Wesleyan, like Middlesex Community College. All places also involved with the name stacking method as victims. These are, for example, these are evidences. Not to, so this is a method that keeps identity, the ground locations, keeps identities needing to be used by positions of perception that have to discern, we're using correlation, we're using the physical delusions of each science as evidence. They are recorded, like with volume theory. We'll examine this. Like uses of, they're victims, but as victim predators, predator uses of them. Victim reactions, like, for example, Scientology. Because they're pretending to be about, they're involved with this with scientific consensus and scientific process is prevented free speech. They're preventing mandated law from being followed. They're falsifying police reports, our courts, and our police forms distinctly and non-distinctly. Former director of the FBI down, Robert Luskin. Tons of people interbranch from my town. Also crimes with black and white female judges. That's evidence. Also juxtaposed natures of abuses of each age of factory nature with them. That's evidence. See, they're lying about evidence, forging names, switching names, and hiding this from attorney generals, keeping the attorney generals forced to stay in collusion with locations, areas, and states, like Connecticut, associated with all the topics in the news. So they have the only people we could have to experience the world like that through CNN. We have them also used by their interbranch sources. And see, now they have physical delusions and criminally foreign influenced information, and no one is following mandated law. They have been using Facebook coached just like the news media to hide actual sequence, because their sequence racketeering is one thing that is shared by all these juxtaposed natures of abuses of each age of factory nature. They're also faking conversations. They're sickly, distinctly employing boys and girls to victim reactions that they keep self-value with the sequence shifts where they're getting where boys and girls, the value actually, and men and women, their value actually is being exploited by that archetypal breaching method with all locations and with all the branches of government further and further simultaneously, while all the private database relationship stewards further and further to the same identity of the ground locations. Same needs to self-value sequence racketeering. Self-value physical delusions regarding the credibility of the directors of our agencies, of the credibility of the identity of the ground locations of those agencies, of those courts, each of them. Originally and still. That's correlations means. We let the world know and understand the world, understand how to think. These five identities, understand these five identities of sequence nature that before matter, unobstructed one way, as an order of a value, as the value of an order that is shared by these five identities of order, of sequence nature, by one identity of order, by one identity of simultaneous nature. Sequence nature is only positive, also positive unto itself, whereas and how it's only increasing, where and how we are life as a quality of diffusion, automatically temporary positive. But temporary positive, criminal insidiousness nature reveals, especially criminally legalized criminal insidiousness nature. It needs to pretend positive is other than it is. It needs to value each position of the human fact shaping nature, each age of it, incapable of fathoming what is very simple to understand and to reveal from nowhere, understanding more and more to it in relationship to, because it's real. It's where evolution's fruits and gifts come out of nowhere, which is identity of the ground relationship to nature as nature, native pure. So we have effectively recorded self-value uses of the identity of England, for example. In America, they still make summary convictions that teach with physical delusions and with criminally foreign influence premises treatments and sequence treatments those as value treatments in relationship to the order of value, which is identity's order of relationship to itself. The order of value is the order of relationship to positive and negative because of the relationship to the order of identity. Its nature of volume is distinct from the nature of volume of water/S. And these waters have identities of relationship to themselves, positive or negative, in demonstration to us of the value of its identity of relationship to itself, and of the value of that further. So it only feels like game. See, we have pretended. So we have pretended ethics, a theater, as criminal and serious nature needed to pretend it's because these are crime methods where the people who are supposed to counter crimes were in collusion with all of them. They're going to pretend just in relationship to their roles with each age of fact, attribute nature in relationship to all locations, areas, and states needing to be ready to counter, need to be trained to counter all that bad, not by accident, all that with negative value nature, progressions, acts, nature, like predicate acts. Predicate act and demonstration of a criminal serious nature of identity. Identity's identity of relationship to itself. A quality of fact, attribute nature as a wrongdoer in relationship to science's identity of value progression. Can't defend that and afford. Understood. The means to understand. This identity of value progression is attached to all questions. So pantheism is not about many gods, per how we set this up, because it's already set up. Pantheism is about the identity of value progression that is shared by the many nations of this species. That is three bonded identities of sequence nature, individual, grouped, and together. Excuse me. And so we have to understand how they were made victims. Everyone's victim predator. Everyone. We have to understand victims who don't know how to defend properly the first part of the Old Testament and the first part of the Quran. They don't know how to defend why and how the church was forced to fight with England about it not being written in Latin and or about it being written in English. That's because of how they were being used by a method they didn't understand that was that invested everyone needing to keep valued the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts in nature needed to cause it. Actually, predicate acts, nature's like criminalization, needing to blame the cause of that on other things and others on self, on individuals wrong, on groups wrong, and on the species wrong. And that's still what we have as a problem here today, and that's maintained self-cultivated, self-valued, rolls with that. So they have terms like Islamic extremism. They won't let you demonstrate. It is recorded effectively how they have all the identities of the sciences in collusion. They have the overt. They just like they have parts of modern nation cities only allowed to unfold. States, all locations, areas, states, sciences, blaming the real causes of it, blaming the active value of it, labeling it as other, as only means to hear the voices, hearing them wrong, pretending to misperceive things, attaching people to fake words, fake locations, fake relationships to others. This is intercampuses of each age and nature, investing the parents to what they call debates, but preventing the critical voices, making bad things happen, even killing roles with killers. Our interbranch family members, originally and still, worse than witch trials. And what do they call the? What do they tell the kids the witch trials are about? Oh, they were about drugs. These same courts, these same police forms, have all kinds of private medical racketeering roles with a whole bunch of nations. Then how do they hide that? This completely fact-cheaping nature racketeering. Self-valued roles with database racketeering further and further, completely identity the ground, locations, areas, states. They know where everyone's going to walk. This is sophistication here before anyone was. They know whoever's going to be a leader of any modern nation. They can't get any group of nation into. They can't be themselves individually grouped together. No modern nation can counter how tactically denatured the identity of the ground, the identity of the waters, the identity of relationship to itself, the identity of relativity. That which is distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously onto three manifest semi-natures of its one identity of volume, which are inherent, active, and progressive. So where it is distinctly onto its inherent nature of volume, increasingly, for example, it is simultaneously distinctly onto each distinct nature of volume as its own nature of volume. So that's three parts of one identity of volume. Like just like a cell of our body has a cell nucleus, a cell wall, a cell nucleus, cell body, and a cell wall, and they are discernibly. If you look at a tomato cell under a microscope, if you cut a slice of a thin slice, transverse section of a tomato and put it under a microscope, and you look at it, you could discern a cell nucleus manifest, a cell body manifest, and a cell wall, and all the cell walls are shared, and not just water is coming through there. An identity of value progression that is positive or negative unto itself is coming through, and not just that is coming through there. It's complete value of that, which is again, its identity of relationship to itself. This which is inseparable from all questions. This which they use theories to pretend does not exist while they simultaneously have physical delusions. They are pretending other people have physical delusions because they also simultaneously have us already invested into fake conversations since we're little kids that never were. All exceptions are recorded having been and being criminally exploited. This is what really led up to the World Trade Center attack. We don't have integrity of one branch of government to follow mandated law. They have been too sick too long. Worse than the little kids on that movie, for example. A lot of ways these movies. So I leave out the movies because we have fake. You mentioned theater. They pretend ulterior to theater is sick because how they are victims, victim predators though. Originally, still. Again, we're going to use correlation here per their sequence racketeering. They pretend not to understand you when you say they're sequence shifts, they're falsified police reports, mail crime, wire crimes, They're lying about what is actually recorded inside and outside of police stations, attaching people to fake conversations with police officers, the same ones involved with sexual, medical, and judicial abuses of kids, the same ones involved with that same campus with families associated with it, with high-ranking positions associated with medical racketeering, with judicial racketeering, worse than racketeering, worse than war crimes, human crimes. You know, where it counts. Sequence treatments, fact treatment, quality of fact treatment nature. Forgiveness is for this. These are courts and our police forms the whole time that have been collusion with interreligious spots. And this method that also uses identities. Now you have identity of the ground locations like people stacking in New York City, throughout the world, next to tactically denatured since before cars, pathologies of what they call suburban infrastructure, that which was forced by that breaching method, that torture method, that forced everyone to keep going, not for money, not for cotton. Where it has now that's not true, it was for that. That was juxtaposed. That was engineered to keep everyone invested, blaming other things other than themselves. For that organized crime method, worse than war crime, simple organized crime method, actually recorded that American history is actually about, which is the evidence of that and how all locations, areas, states, all sciences were invested, still rolls with that entrenched, that was effectively having prevented our founders from having free speech. All exceptions of it, where they did have free speech, are recorded having been self-valued and forced uses as truths for lies, where they can pretend they don't realize they didn't have free speech just because they fought for free speech. They pretend they won free speech. That's just one. So they're prevented. We have the surface values of the Constitution prevented. We have all trick fact treatment natures. Oh, what amendment? What law is it? We have criminal readings of the statutes actually recorded. Sequence racketeering. See, we need to have mandated law follow in relationship to the sequence shifts. Then they invest themselves still speaking. See, this is how they have people state victim predators private, like news agencies, WFSB, Fox Connecticut News. They're recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with police, with crimes with police equipment, and with drug crimes, and with medical crimes with children, attaching kids to fake relationships to doctors that never were, exploiting that through time. Roles with child sex offenders and their family members, then and further. with organized crime acts, and roles with them that those various natures of courts that put them away, and the stewards of those prisons already had with their family members also with them before that, leading up to the World Trade Center attack. Hartford courts recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with military police and women on off Central Connecticut State University, on off West Hartford locations, on off ends of highway exits, on off a serial killer's body dumping spot, on off body dumping spots reported and confessed by people associated with a Dillon family and with a Fianza family, with judges and with them, with foreign and domestic crimes, with overt criminal enterprises, and with the courts and prisons, and people associated with forensics locations, further involved with racketeering uses of people on the sex offender registry, by those courts and doctors tied to those courts involved with crimes on and off their locations. Also with people at the end of the Burn Turnpike associated with a Soto family. Also my town's police chief's daughter and a police chief years ago. Now his daughter was also involved with a whole bunch of people that went to my school with her when I was in high school. I don't know if she was in my middle school. A whole bunch of people in middle school I never had a class with. They attached me to fake locations, fake uh, relationships to them. They've been using databases, just writing fake things into them through time, tactically, methodically, through juxtaposed other motivations, natures, needs, interests apparent but not real. These are how. So we have to counter how Russians and Americans are recorded in collusion with a whole bunch of nations with medical families that are involved with identity thefts, frauds, and racketeering uses of Facebook to pretend they had conversations with people, forging names, switching names with other doctors and stuff like that. Because they used 3 times. They used you when there are verbal conflicts between people, when people don't want things to be heard by the police, like the people involved with the child crimes further, whether with Weathersfield Police, State Police, FBI, CIA, their family members, all intercities involved also with overt criminal enterprises, involved with crimes with killers and body dumping spots, as people also further involved with criminal uses of the World Trade Center, leading up to it and in that context of the World Trade Center attack, and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals right next to it, leading up to it, and then the Ninth Circuit right before the trade centers were attacked and taken out. The court right next to it, insidiously from inside of it, someone had made replicated papers, post dated them to make them look post handed in late. Papers that had been handed in on time to the Ninth Circuit and shown to a panel of judges. That court was also used interstates by the same people, from Connecticut, interbranch, intercampuses, through time involved racketeering uses of all kinds of natures of organized crime, acts, roles with child sex offenders' families that I barely know of. And they hid the confessions tied to this. They lie about what is act. I also had them verified on Facebook. Weathersfield Police and people, a whole bunch of people tied to them with New Britain Superior Court and forensics locations, also confessed, recorded, demonstrated that Phil Cololo and that 2 Mendez police brothers, 2 Kerr police brothers. I don't know if they're police. They were recorded, confessed, and demonstrated crimes with police and with a Dillon family, who was also with my new and past neighbors, involved crimes with foreign and domestic overt criminal enterprises in state police and people on and off Central Connecticut State University and all along the routes that go towards there and the roads. Now, we have to have their roles with sequence shifts, forging names and switching names. I don't know the names of my new neighbors, but they have real estate agencies also involved with it. Don't forget, this is former director of the FBI, federal criminal code defendants of his. I also barely know, involved with human trafficking with them. All kinds of natures of racketeering, mail crime rolls, falsified police reports rolls, identity thefts, frauds, racketeering, with sexual abuses of little kids, crimes. Officer Joe DeMoro from Weathersfield Police reportedly, and confessed by family members of his. Also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, involved through time by a whole bunch of them associated with the end of Town Line Road and on off strip malls, on off regular malls, locations, as people, dozens of people with Central Connecticut State University and associated with Trinity College recorded, confessed, demonstrated uses of the identity of those other ground locations used for false crimes with judges and police firms and foreign families, overt criminal enterprises, uses of untimely deaths that are connected, involved also as the ones with the different natures of racketeering associated or whatever it's called, associated with worse than that, with the child sex offenders. And this is everyone speaking through others because they had kids. They invested themselves needing to hide life progressions through time for what they were really doing, with the rest further involved with the principal sex offenders campus. Then and now, my town's police chief's daughter in foreign domestic family, please, WFSB and a Fred Grisey and my and the Cololo family associated with this Phil Cololo and with a Scalora family also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with predicate acts on and off Central Connecticut State University with judges and with prosecutors and with overt criminal enterprises and with the stewards of the Witness Protection Program, also recorded involved with racketeering with kids with the area and untimely deaths and sexual abuses of groups of them that are also involved with their exploitations of preemptively known self-valued criminally foreign influenced Washington, D.C. and World Trade Center tied manifest relationships between each age of fact sheet, each age of campus, each nature of them. Like, for example, also fire departments. This is also simultaneously where and how they have private databases and also stewards also kept needing to hide and to self-value life progressions onto each position of the human fact sheet nature, needing quality of fact sheet nature to defend ourselves originally and still prevented free speech. Uses of words like democracy and like the republic with physical delusions only allow speech. This to your identities other, blaming on another party, fake sides. I'll drop the force. All right! We try tribes. I tell best by saying who have child abused branches of government. So I beg you, one news agency allowed me to report the sequence shifts and the recorded evidence of how they methodically and why, because their motivations actually recorded for how they methodically prevent mandated law, how they methodically had to and do pretend other, sickly, sicker than those kids in that movie. That I forgot to mention it, Mosquito or something like that. Lord of the Flies. And everyone has to go watch Lord of the Flies. Look on YouTube. Use the YouTube search engine because you can find out how to fix this thing, that thing. People don't realize you have to. That's a separate search engine. You could Google things, but but that's separate from using the YouTube search feature because now you can watch videos. Now this video is for humanity, so I'm aware that there are nations that we could afford this way to give them pipes, a pathology of infrastructure that the pathology of infrastructure was still in since before cars, where it's suburban next to no overtly forsaken, people stacked, all exceptions built for the fact sheet nature, uses of that where they used and use the branches of government and all private database relationships simultaneously, all sciences abridged simultaneously. They're using positive treatments as standing criminal diseases natures. With this standing identity, the ground relationship to itself will only stay another course for words. another way. Boxings. I tell us things. Okay, that's it's almost exactly something. We're trying to hit it right at 60 minutes. I'm gonna end this. Good night.